This is Mike Fallek.
And Alan talking about movies. They may be best friends, but they always disagree.
Mike Fallek.
And Alan, I seen that.
Of Let's Start a Cult podcast.
Cool. And so now you have a movie.
I have a movie, and I think we're going to end up talking about a lot of different movies. I know this, but I'm really going to call it 4 movies, because that's the phenomena I want to talk about.
Spider-Man.
That is a good guess. But I don't know if people really remember that these are 4 feature-length movies.
Okay.
So I won't let you flounder and sort of, but I guess, take a guess. If I were to say 4 feature-length movies, what would you guess?
Are they all together? Is it like part 1, part 2, part 3?
2 of them are, and then the other 2 are independent. Which sort of makes it obvious in the end. But if you were to guess like a 4-movie saga.
Aliens. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good guess. Aliens, Predators, probably another good guess.
That was the other thing I was thinking.
No, I wanted to talk about the 4 feature-length Futurama movies.
Okay. I've never seen them.
People often forget that this was how this series got by, was they made 4 feature-length movies on DVD, straight to DVD releases.
Yeah.
And I will say this without question, and anyone that wants to question this, I'm willing to have a discussion about it, but anyone that sort of flat out says, no, really has to go examine Futurama. I think Futurama is the greatest American animated series, not just TV show, but I think it's the greatest feat of American animation possibly ever. I think it trumps Pixar in a lot of ways. I think I think that show is the best animation to ever come out of America.
Huh. That's interesting. I've only watched, probably 2 or 3 seasons of Futurama.
But it's beautiful. Even whatever seasons you've ever watched, it's worth going back and just watching and being like, wow, this was on, compared to anything else, it's just like, the backgrounds are so rich and these visual choices are just stunning. There's this cel-shaded 3D style of animation. And there's no laziness to it. It's truly, truly a beautiful show. And it was on TV. It was on a network that really makes minimal kind of cartoony stuff, even compared to The Simpsons. It's a beautiful show.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed the seasons that I watched, and then it got taken off Netflix, and I just never pursued it beyond that.
I actually briefly spoke about this when I was on the show. I talked about my cord cutting, and I am now fully cut, not just from cable.
Like circumcision?
I've been meaning to take care of it for years. It's up on that board. You go, get the tires rotated and get circumcised. Finish it already. No, I do not subscribe to any service.
Okay.
I simply have allocated that budget to, so essentially I spend, my Netflix budget, which is like $8 a month.
Yeah.
On DVDs. I live in Boston, there's a huge used DVD culture because of all the college kids that go to school here. And I literally only watch DVDs now. And I knew, and sort of the conversion to it was Futurama going off Netflix, because I had a couple seasons on DVD and I was like, I'm just going to stop using Netflix and I'm going to make sure I own every season of Futurama. And now I've started, since I did that was my budget with Netflix for a few months. Now I'm trying to get all the Simpsons DVDs, and it's great.
That's it.
Honestly, that is the one that I'm never going to be able to get. My near future goal is having all of Frasier on DVD, because at least that's only like 7 seasons.
Yeah.
But, I don't even think they're all out yet. They just because they have to do audio commentaries, and I think they're just backlogged. But, Futurama is truly a show. We were talking about sci-fi before. A show that is, mostly a joke, but at the same time, you know, is sometimes parodying stuff, but isn't always parodying stuff. It's making jokes, but it's more in the vein of Hitchhiker's Guide, which I really like, which is like genuine sci-fi, but being funny about it. Just taking a genuinely humorous stance towards sci-fi. It's sort of the Mark Twain of sci-fi. It isn't that it's parody all the time, which I think a lot of people don't understand that about sci-fi when they see, I won't mention a certain show that's on the air now, but it's like you can make fun of the idea of science fiction while being genuinely science fiction-y and not just making stupid parodies all the time.
Well, that's how I felt about Kingsman, the first one. Not the second one wasn't very good, but the first one.
Oh, it wasn't? That's disappointing, because that first one I was taken by surprise as how good it was.
The second one felt like they were just trying to hit all the same moments of the first one. Like it felt like they just were like, oh, that worked, let's do that again. Kind of like, did you see Hangover 1 and 2?
I know I probably have seen one of them.
Okay. Well, so the first one was actually pretty good, pretty funny, but the second one was basically just number one redid somewhere else. And that's kind of how I felt about Kingsman too.
You know what? I think I've seen both of them, which is sort of weird to think about. Yeah, I think I've seen both the Hangovers.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I felt with Kingsman 2. It was fun, but it wasn't, like, Kingsman 1 was really good, I thought. Kingsman 2 was just like, meh.
It's so funny you brought that up, because that was exactly what I thought. I go, it seems like it's just sort of this parody thing and I don't want to watch it. And someone was like, no, it's self-aware, but it's also like, it's its own thing. It's super cool. It's not always being self-aware. It's like, it's making a real kind of go of doing these things. And I sort of thought, because in the second one, when they showed it, I was like, oh, what a great visual to do, because no one had really done justice to this idea except for in the Avengers. They kind of played with it, but someone was like, you know, the visual of blowing up an underground facility. I thought that was a great, you know, they gave it away in the trailer for Kingsman 2, but you know, what a great thing to say. Like, you would see it from above as this very bizarre thing of just the ground imploding. You know, that was a genuine piece of action that I thought they were adding to the world of. That was, even just from a visual standpoint, which I don't think a lot of people that aren't really into film consider all the time. It's just like, from a visual standpoint, like, is the person adding something to the thing? With Avatar, it's like, people are always like, oh, it's just like Fern Gully. It's like, okay, but this is it feels like Fern Gully's real in this thing. Like, that guy looks like he's filming a real, like, no one has done that.
Yeah.
And so, like, with the Kingsman, I was always like, oh, they're adding a really cool, I think the thing that they sort of did that even they did better than James Bond was they took those gadgets, which whenever I would read James Bond or read I never felt the gadgets, the casual gadgets were ever well represented. And I think the Kingsmen genuinely were like, here's a pen and it does this, and here's a lighter and it does this. I think they genuinely were the first people to do that well. Yeah. You know, and not as a joke.
It was, when I saw it, I was surprised at how good of a movie it actually was, because I thought it was not going to be in the vein of like Scary Movie parody. But like, I thought it was gonna be so parody-esque, or the tropey parody style, you know, where it's just constantly hitting, you know, punching up to James Bond, right? Like, we're just a small movie, we're gonna attack constantly. But it's like they knew spy movies and they loved spy movies, and they're like, hey, this thing that they do in spy movies is dumb. Let's point it out. And
what I like is that they're not always talking about spy movies. I think my number one pet peeve with vampire movies is when someone goes, the vampires in the movies, when they say it in the movies. I'm like, why are you talking about vampire movies? Just tell me, just make the different vampire movie and I'll like this more.
Sorry, can you say that? I didn't quite follow with the. So when they mention vampires, that's the problem?
In vampire movies. They will frequently in a vampire movie, because you're saying like they weren't just punching up to movies, like to spy movies. Like every once in a while in Kingsman, I think they go, you know, oh, that's just in the movies, which spy movies are, you know, big. So and of course James Bond is one of the biggest movie franchises up until recently. It was, that's what people thought movies were. But, there's always been spy movies.
Yeah.
But in vampire movies, if you go watch most vampire movies, except for some really, really good ones, and even some of the really good ones do it, in the vampire movie, someone will say it's not like in the movies, they always depict vampires as X.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, don't talk about other vampire movies. Like, why are we talking about a universe in which vampire movies exist? Like, that's so weird. Like, that's why I love Watchmen, if we're going to talk about, sort of the modern era of these schlock movies, which is, not what Futurama is, but our last discussion, is like, he made the point instantly to be like, you wouldn't really superhero movies would be more documentarian and more real life. So kids wouldn't be buying superhero comic books anymore. Those would go away if there were real superheroes.
Yeah.
Like, they instead would be trying. So his point was like, if they're superheroes, kids would probably read more about pirates, which used to be a big thing for kids. It used to be a lot bigger for kids, was the pirate genre. And so he made a point to say, no, if there's a world in which this exists, then that movie genre won't exist the same way.
Yeah.
And so I always get annoyed when they keep mentioning movies, and like, you're going to take me out of it if you keep mentioning vampire movies in a vampire thing.
Yeah. Well, that brings up two thoughts. It's not quite the same, but what drives me crazy in movies is so The Walking Dead, I think, does it really well, especially in the comics, is when you meet a new group of people, they have a different name for the zombies, whether it's roamers or biters or, walkers or whatever. Because that's what would happen. I hate when movies or TV shows or anything like that. Prison Break was really bad about this because the bad guys, they nicknamed them the Company, and then that was just it. Everyone knew this group of people as the Company, even themselves. They called themselves the Company, and it was just like, that makes zero sense. Why would anyone call themselves that? Why would everyone be on the same page with this mystery group of people having the same name? It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's just convenience for people who are watching it, so that the bad guys are talking about the same people the good guys are talking about. But there's no realism in that.
I think that part of that is coming from a genre. Again, this all becomes a discussion about Japan, which I think is worth bringing up because I floated something out as lofty as the best animation to come from America.
Yeah.
But Japan is great at creating lore. And the problem is that a lot of American filmmakers want to be Japanese when they create sci-fi and when they create fantasy and when they create horror. And so, let's face it, Prison Break is not it's not a real Prison Break movie. It's a fantasy movie. It's a dungeon movie, right? It's a horror movie. They are stuck in a dungeon, and that's it. They have magic powers. They have all the way down to a tattooed man who knows everything. A magical map, essentially, is that movie. It's a dungeon movie.
Yeah.
So the problem is that Japan is so good at creating this lore that they kind of mimic it, and they use these, pseudo-religious things. But the problem is that the Japanese people are so good at casually putting in what we would call rules in filmmaking and storytelling, where it's like the rule makes sense, and so you instantly create lore. And one of the best examples of not creating lore but then creating legend in real life is, again, we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball Z. Why is there the Z in there? And then sometimes the narrator will call the characters the Z fighters. And every once in a while the idea of the Z fighters will come up, but it will never be said by anyone in the show. And so it's this reverse thing where somehow this world of Dragon Ball Z becomes more real by the narrator, and the world, our world, will refer to them as the Z fighters, and they are legends in our world. Like, we don't even as humans refer to Goku and his friends as the same thing that they are referred to in their world. And what's great to that point too, and why Dragon Ball Z works, is it's only at Cell Saga that certain people start to like vaguely remember Goku being on TV. And, they bring up the fact that, there's these misremembered legends and that people, it's Cell Saga for people that don't know. This is 200 episodes in that the filmmakers finally address, like, oh no, this guy saved the world a bunch of times and nobody knows who he is. And that's a crazy thing it's that restraint that American filmmakers don't have, that they don't have the restraint to be like, I'll get to it. Well, look, we'll get there. But they instantly, you're right. They want to be like the company.
Yeah.
And everybody knows these guys and things like that. And you don't set up why they can communicate with each other. It becomes strange. Now, are you a fan of animation in general?
Yes and no. Certain ones I really like, and then it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't have the patience, because it takes a lot of effort to get into animation shows. I feel like, especially, from other cultures, because you have to really invest and understand the rules to appreciate the show.
So you sort of straddle a few lines there, though, because I would ask, well, what about Futurama, Flintstones, The Simpsons, which are very, very much the crux of the plot, Jetsons. The crux of these plots are America. Very much those shows, which are kind of classic American animation, are about the American experience. But then, of course, you now have a foot in the Asian world, where a lot of these lore and legends and things are not necessarily known by everyone, but are ingrained in their TV. A lot of Americans don't know that there is a genre of Asian soap opera which plays off of the Middle Ages. That us having this, we are actually very late to the game in having shows like Game of Thrones. That Game of Thrones is kind of a generic genre for the Asian part of the world. That 1500s kind of court drama, not court, king's court kind of dramas with a little bit of magic in it are standard. Knowing that Game of Thrones is going on is kind of, it's like, all right, so they're finally doing what we've been doing. So, and what becomes these lore and legends that we don't really know, and these kind of structures of kings and princes and stuff like that, are more ingrained in culture. So I would say, is it just the format of it? Is it just getting into the crazy animation of it? Like, did you watch The Simpsons? What about?
So most American animation I don't like.
Okay.
So Simpsons, I liked it when I was a kid because you're supposed to. But when I started forming my own opinions, I never could get into it. South Park, I really like.
Yeah.
Okay. Futurama is good. Rick and Morty is interesting. But
I don't like Rick and Morty. I'll throw that out there right now. I don't like it. I can't get over that it's that the characters are supposed to be Back to the Future, which I also don't really think is a great movie.
Yeah, I never cared for those movies either. But,
I love this conversation because you and I are on the same page, but there's somebody screaming at both of us.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
but I'll say this in terms of relating to you, because I feel like, because I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and I didn't react being like, I like the Simpsons, but I also feel like with Rick and Morty and with Back to the Future, I've never really understood why people are so crazy about it. And it's the same with, Indiana Jones and, Back to the Future. And, I always go when people really, really like those things, I go, man, tell me what happened. Like, name some scenes out of Indiana Jones that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
tell me what happened specifically throughout the movie. And you'll find most people can't do it. Same with Back to the Future. You'll find that most people are like, I love Back to the Future. Like, what happens in Back to the Future 2? What is the whole plot to the movie? And they don't really know.
Yeah.
And I see people liking them. I understand if you really like it, but I don't really feel bad that I watch those shows and I'm like, I watch Rick and Morty. I'm like, okay, cool. It's not hitting.
Yeah.
Or I watch Back to the Future. I'm like, cool. Yeah. it's interesting, but it's not really hitting with me. Like, it's an emotional thing. People like it or they don't. Like, and I guess it is the same way with The Simpsons. Is like, I just love it because I love Homer. I'm big into character acting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's a big part for me, is that I like how much these characters commit. And that's really it for me, especially with a lot of Matt Groening stuff, is people really commit to the characters. But I could see not really being into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just never could get into it. I never enjoyed it once I started deciding what I liked. Do you know what I mean? Like, once I
What about the Americana thing? What about that? What about that whole aspect of it? You know, Homer and his job and his you know, he works at a nuclear power plant and he's this oafish kind of obese man. You know, what about that whole element of it? The smart aleck kid and the overachiever kid that goes unappreciated. You know, did that at all hit?
No, not really. It never really, it honestly, it doesn't even really matter to me now. Cause it's all such a facade anyways, you know, like in real life, that aspiration, the Americana aspiration is kind of an empty dream. It seems to be, you know, like it's just a deflection from what is actually happening in life.
Right. And I think that's maybe the underlying commentary of The Simpsons, which is, of course, that, you know, if you, cause I've been watching a lot of the audio commentaries and they often point out that the scariness of the idea of Homer, that you know, it's an idiot who works at a nuclear power plant. Like, it should be a very scary show to you. It's you know, this dad that chokes his kid all the time. It's like, it's a very terrifying show. This genius little girl that nobody understands. Like, it's a scary show, and it's the baby that's falling all over and just goes unsupervised, and pets allowed to run amok. Like, life is much more unruly than we kind of pretend it to be, as I think the underlying commentary. But I don't think I think that for someone like you that feels that more at their forefront, where it's like, this is all a facade, they need to play with it more for you to really care.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be very scary.
That's what I like about things like South Park, is that it's so heavy on the commentary, the social commentary, where you like, every episode makes you consider like, oh, why is that a thing? And that I understand why most shows don't do it, because that's really, really hard. Like, it's not easy to have a well-formed opinion on a lot of different topics, especially when you're doing however many episodes a year.
Which I think is why maybe, you might not like The Simpsons or Futurama as much, or American genre of possibly anything, because a big part of the American genre is, to brush it aside.
Yeah.
Which is to say, in other countries, when a character change happens, that character change happens.
Yes.
That's it.
Well, that's
it. If you didn't see that episode, you didn't get it. That's it for the rest of the series.
Did you ever watch Evangelion? Neon Genesis?
Oh, of course.
That's one of my favorite, animes. That's like, when I think of anime, that's kind of my first go-to, especially international. I think, what is it, Japanese?
Yeah.
And,
it was a manga originally, and then, there were 2 runs of it. It's one of the famous, animes that had to kind of be redone, was sort of done sloppily, lazily, and so there's 2 versions of the same story, but they're mostly the same.
Gotcha. And everything has weight. Every action, every choice, it seems like it's just constantly, you know, building on itself, either in a positive way or in a negative way. The characters are not static. They're changing, and what happens has an impact. And that's what I appreciate about it.
And one of the things that show does that I really appreciate about, if you don't know, Evangelion is, we were talking about Pacific Rim the last time we spoke. Yeah. Essentially, it is Pacific Rim. These monsters come from another dimension. But what's crazy about it is that it really is about, a very blatant commentary on what we were just saying before about Homer Simpson. If anything, Evangelion is sort of the, antithesis of the American thing, where it's like, when confronted with these huge dangers, finding these human moments are still gonna happen. Like,
Yes.
really the show is about these very human moments between teenagers. And because of that, even though there's this huge amount of action, the show will allow little moments like conversations to breathe, and it's not like I'm making it sound like it's overly dramatic, like there's monster fights and then these teenagers are finding themselves. No, it's like there's monster fights and then these kids have these sort of very casual conversations where they're not really sure about themselves. And if you watch that show, there's long stretches of silence where these kids just don't know what to say, or someone says something and it hurts.
Yeah.
And so you're just left to be like, ugh, like this is real life. Like you're just left with a kid being like a 15-year-old kid just being like, ugh, and kind of sitting there taking this criticism or bad news or something. And it is the opposite of American TV where it's like, all right, next week, whatever. We sort of brush things off.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Evangelion is the complete opposite. I love that show is really a show about sound, because then for the next 50 years, everyone just copies their soundscape for attacks and monsters and things like that. It's a beautiful show that isn't afraid to have loud bug noises in the summer and train noises, and characters will stop talking because a car is passing or a truck is going by. It's a really great sound show. I love that. I mean, that's honestly a masterpiece of animation, and is possibly the greatest action anime ever, which is a lot coming from me. It isn't my favorite, but it's really hard to watch any scene in that show and not be like, that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, that was
perfect scene.
My intro into foreign animation. That was like the first thing I ever saw. And so I think I kind of had the bar set high getting into it,
The problem with that too is it's hyper realistic.
Yes.
Even though there's monsters, it's hyper realistic.
Where do they live? San Fran, Tokyo? Is that? No, that's that's Big Hero 6. Where?
That's big. They live in Neo Tokyo.
Neo Tokyo, that's right.
Which is actually a trope. It's a meme. Neo Tokyo is not unique to that show, but Neo Tokyo is a interpretation that many authors have had. I believe Akira was the first, the author of the manga of Akira was the first to propose it. But essentially the idea was that Tokyo will have to adapt to disasters, whether it's earthquakes or whether it's monsters or, whether it's atomic bombs, that there will eventually be a Tokyo that is totally different. And in their version of it, it's underground. Yeah. That's their solution. Is that they built it from, in a cave, and that the skyscrapers are sort of ground diggers, and they build huge buildings that go down. So elevators go down, and it's an underground but also upside down city. Yeah. It isn't just an underground city. It attaches to the top of the crust and then goes downwards.
What I think is an interesting comparison to Evangelion is Attack on Titan. I don't know how you feel about that, but I could not get into it. And it's a very similar idea, but I don't feel like they do it as well. Like the giant monsters attacking a city, and you have these young people.
I'd actually say that it's not really similar at all, because
I just mean in the tagline or the structure, not in the way it's done or how they make it, but the conflict is somewhat similar. Right.
So here's where I think Hollywood allows itself to get confused, is by that same thing. Because for me, when I look at a sci-fi or fantasy, or we can use the word anime even though it might be inappropriate in this case. Yeah. But when I look at a sci-fi or fantasy, I look at the underlying core. So I say, what is Attack on Titan about? Attack on Titan is about the Cultural Revolution. Attack on Titan is about, as has been done many times before, a commentary on the Cultural Revolution, young children being used as soldiers. Yes. Which you see in Evangelion, but of course, the commentary of Evangelion is closer to Hunger Games, which is to say, the fragility of the world, which is to say, we often see soldiers as these big grown heroes, but of course most of them are no older than 18. These are the men that we see as superheroes. That's the commentary there. But not necessarily the same show. They're disparately different. You know, Attack on Titan is a fantasy knight kind of story.
Yes.
It's these kids becoming, indoctrinated to fighting with, whatchamacallit, swords. They're joining up, they're recruiting, they think they're brave, but they're of course, you know, just fighting to fight because everyone fights and it's what to do and it's what your friends are doing and things like that. Well, of course, Evangelion is very blatantly a commentary on, you know, it's a true monster movie in that what the monster is more to do with inner demons and the demons of life and your belief of the universe. It's not a coincidence that the name of the show is Evangelion. It's an evangelical tale. It's a story of confronting, gods and confronting the way the world is. And there's often in a lot of, you know, there's a lot of Christian imagery in that show.
Yes.
And a big part of it is confronting the end of the world and the idea of, you know, perhaps the world it's for the better or something like that the world is ending, or that this is, you know, so they're very different shows in my mind, especially because the tech in, you know, there's a magic wand in, whatchamacallit, Attack on Titan, which is that sort of gymnastic device they have is their kind of magic wand, as opposed to Evangelion, which is more very, very practical. The military bases are huge, and when things break, it takes them a while, and it's very grounded in reality, which is, I think, what you like.
Yes.
I don't think you like magic wands, which is a really easy element to avoid.
Yeah, I don't like anything that I have to become dumb to appreciate. Does that? I don't. That might seem a little harsh, but like where you have to just accept it. Like the show is lazy, and they're like, "This is what's happening. Just take it. You know, just enjoy it." Because it just takes me out of it. It's a magic wand. It's a magic, and I would recommend on that same term, there's a couple of books and animes and things like that, which it would be interesting to know what you think of them, because they have a very practical idea of magic. So Harry Potter, I'd imagine you're not a huge fan of, because magic wand, they just have magic, they shoot magic. I enjoy the books. I did not like the movies.
So maybe that makes even more sense, because, you know, in the movies, they just kind of have the magic, where in the books, like they have to earn it. They spend a lot of times. Yeah, they have to earn it, like disapparating. I love the sixth book of Harry Potter. It's actually my favorite, where the kids learn to disapparate, which is the teleportation of the universe. And it's really hard. It's like the hardest thing they ever learn, and they get hurt and they injure themselves, and they really have to earn it. Which I would assume there's a Netflix series called, Magi. I'd assume you hate that, because essentially the characters just have magic.
Gotcha. I haven't seen that, but that doesn't sound appealing.
I would be interested to know what you think of, Full Metal Alchemist.
Haven't seen that one either. But,
there are
you brought up
strict rules for magic.
Is there? The Akira you brought up earlier. I really liked Akira.
Akira is a very practical thing.
Even though he ends up, you know, basically a god, right, at the end, but it builds to that, you know, it's not the Matrix 2, it's the Matrix 1, where he's learning and earning it and gaining it and figuring it out.
Well, I'd say with you can't watch, we can talk about the Matrix another time, because that'll take another 3 hours, but I love the Matrix, and I think you have to watch every single thing they've done in order to really love the Matrix. You
like the Matrix series or the first Matrix? Because I really like the first Matrix.
I like every single Matrix. You cannot watch it. You can't watch them as individual movies. No. They're making a point across every single. We don't have time to talk about it. They are amazing. If you watch the Matrix, the Animatrix, which is really important, a lot of people forget that.
I've seen that.
You read the you read the comic books and you watch the third one, you watch them all together, you accept it as one thing. I think it's a great series. I really do. I think it is the greatest, movie series ever made.
Huh. That's interesting. We'll have to talk about that next time. Cause that's not my,
next time.
that's
I
not
could
how
talk
I feel about it.
the Matrix for ages and ages and ages. And now I lost what the hell we were talking about.
Akira?
I got Akira. I'll tell you my Star Wars movie that I want, and it's essentially Akira. It's that first act of Akira, or the first book of Akira if you've read it. And my Star Wars movie I want is, it's about, cause what's Star Wars really about? It's about the emotions of your religious belief, which is to say, do you believe that you can find serenity, or do you believe that, like, you know, there's emotion and that, you know, it's the dark side. It's sort of this classic tale. And will you get off the path? Is there ever a way? You know, essentially Star Wars, the story is, can a sinner ever become a not sinner? Can a sinner ever be forgiven? Is the big story of Star Wars. And so Akira, I would want to take that same story and do like the beginning of Akira. Like, essentially there's these kids on a planet and they get the ability to use the Force via raw emotion. And like, it's just that Akira where they're in the motorcycle gang. Cause that is not like that first part of Akira where they're in the motorcycle gang having these crazy fights. Like, it just changes and it's just not that anymore. But like, that would be my ideal Star Wars, is these kids just figure out the Force, and it's like that. Wow. And then you have to figure out your sides after that, which is what I loved about Akira, is that this power is thrust upon them and then they become different characters from there. Yeah,
it affects them. I would love a non-Skywalker Star Wars movie. I mean, that's kind of what Rogue One was, which is my favorite Star Wars, but I'm not a Star Wars fan. It was Rogue One.
Yeah, it's not a great movie.
But none of them are, is my point. I don't think Rogue One is the
Well, they're not supposed
movie.
to take themselves too seriously. No, I think it's a fun movie. It's meant to be fun, which I just didn't think, I don't know. They're not fun.
Yeah.
They're either not fun, they're not making any points, they're not doing anything. Wait, so you were saying that you wish there was a non-Skywalker. Well, Solo is coming out. They just announced that.
Yeah, that's the same thing. No, it's all the Solo movie. Yeah, it's all the same vein. I would love to see The Force, the movie. You know, kind of like you were talking about, where people are figuring it out. Like, who was the first person to have the Force? So
this has been the big thing of real Star Wars nerds, but I'm not really an extended universe fan.
Yeah.
But they've all, you know, they've sort of made the point throughout the years that the reason these things, the interest gets re-upped is from the extended universe. You know, the only reason these movies now are kind of being entertained is because of these games. The games, which are extended universe, kind of re-upped interest over the years and kept the interest going. And there's been books and things like that. And the extended universe fans have always felt kind of shunned because there are all these great stories about, you know, the origins of the Force and all these other side characters that show up, and just spending time with them, and they're kind of brushed to the side and not given their due, which is sad because there's some great sci-fi in that.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the American mentality of Futurama and all those things, which is like, why aren't we respecting these small changes and treating them as big impact? Why are we just willing to, like, here's this, no, like, forget about that. Like, I want to do this story. Like, so just, it didn't really happen and kind of forget about that. That seems to be this thing that just happens.
Yeah. Yeah, because they completely blew up everything that was extended universe, right? When they brought back number 7,
they called them legends. Was the idea? That's what their response to it was.
Gotcha.
You know, this is no longer a Bible, which everyone's throwing out their Bibles essentially. You know, there is a Marvel encyclopedia, there's a Marvel Bible. The only true, honestly, and this is very sad, the only true continuity of any series ever is the Muppets. The Muppets have one of the strongest continuities of any series. They never break any of their rules. It's a very, very odd thing to think that the Muppets, chickens never talk is a rule of the Muppets. There's like a bunch of them. You can look them up. There's a Muppets Bible that they've never broken, and everything in the Muppets happens. Everything in the Muppets is totally plausible. Whether Miss Piggy and Kermit are together, that's always solid. That's always, kept track of. It's very odd.
Yeah. Well, so I want to get back to Futurama, but before that, I have one other thing I want to hit on. And I think it's kind of the cancer to American animation is Family Guy. Okay. What do you think about Family Guy?
Family Guy is an amazing show.
Really?
Family Guy is amazing comedic animation.
I hate
And here's
Family
what I'll
Guy.
tell Here's why.
All
Because you've been trained as an American viewer to not really understand how to watch it. If you're a student of animation, Family Guy is one of the best shows ever because they will take a joke that's predicated only on animation. Not about a joke that someone says and not about a character trait, but essentially the show is of two minds. The show is, either it's sort of a radio show true to the pilot Seth MacFarlane created based on his senior thesis, where it's just talking. It's just two characters talking and they just have a conversation. Very much American kind of, I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith. It's just talking. It's some talking jokes. It's a radio show. It's guys at a bar talking. And then they will do jokes that no other show is willing to do. I point to two really great pieces of animation from Family Guy that you can watch. Peter picking up the dead frog and Carter Pewterschmidt destroying a bench with a backhoe. And if you look up Carter destroys bench, Family Guy, and Peter picks up dead frog, Family Guy, it's a joke based purely on animation. Purely on like spending time, taking the time with a character and just drawing them in a way that will make the joke funny. Just drawing a joke. And that's why, I'm one of the biggest Family Guy fans. And this ties into to Futurama as well because Family Guy and Futurama, of course, did the exact same thing. People forget. Family Guy was off the air and they made a movie called Stewie's Big Adventure or something like that. And of course, that's what Futurama did too. They were popular on Adult Swim. Family Guy was popular on Adult Swim. Family Guy made a movie, and that was going to be my trivia that we're not doing now, but they both made movies, and then now the movie of Family Guy and I own it. Hold on. I own that movie. Hold on. I'm going to go over to my DVDs. Oh no, it's not in this collection, but I own the DVD with Stewie. It's like Stewie's Big something or whatever. And then, Futurama made Bender's Big Score and both got bought by networks. Both said, okay, we'll buy these seasons, these movies and we'll turn them into episode seasons. And now the movie that they made of Stewie is now just incorporated into whatever season. It's just like these are a couple episodes of the season. Same with Futurama. It's not, that was part of the reason they were taking the movies down was I think that the DVD, essentially a thing with Fox, the entertainment, the DVD side of it and Comedy Central and what was a series and what was a season and everyone was getting screwed over. So now you have to go by Bender's Big Score rather than it being incorporated into the 6th season of, Futurama.
Yeah.
And I was part of those people. I bought that DVD because I was like, I love Family Guy. I not only bought the DVDs of Family Guy, but I bought the DVD that was specifically like, this is Family Guy coming back out on DVD. And Family Guy is now back, which is awesome. And I love that Fox is like, it's one of their flagship shows right alongside The Simpsons, which is great. But it's very sad to me that Futurama, which I think is a spectacular show that never cuts corners and never, shies away from trying hard animation and creating stuff, has gone by the wayside. For shows, quite frankly, inferior shows like Rick and Morty, which is now the sci-fi show of cartoons and things like that.
I cannot get on board with Family Guy. It is.
What's the problem?
The jokes, the structure of the jokes,
which is what?
So where I haven't seen it in so long, I can't think of a specific one, but where Peter is telling a story and he's like, "Hey, remember that time when this and this happened?" And then they cut to it.
So I know you're not a fan of The Simpsons either, but
Yeah.
a lot of people say that. I'll do this now for movie experts. They stole that. Why people saying they don't like that joke and they like The Simpsons is so asinine is because they stole that joke from The Simpsons. The Simpsons used to say, just like that time, blank, blank, blank.
Yeah.
And The Simpsons would be lazy and show a photograph of Homer doing something. And so they would show a single photograph framed. And so they go, Homer, just like the time you were a rodeo clown. And there would be a hilarious photo of Homer being a rodeo clown. And Family Guy sort of was trying to one-up The Simpsons by stealing that joke. And Family Guy said, Peter, just like that time you did this. And they animated the whole sequence. I love that joke. It's a great joke because it's just like, and I think this is why you don't like magic wand things, is because it's like, at least you have the integrity to say you just don't like that across the board. A lot of people will say they don't like that, and I'll be like, but that's a Simpsons joke. And then sometimes, that's not even Simpsons. That's like the fantasy sequence in a lot of things that they would just do these strange alternate worlds where this thing would happen. The cutaway sketch, this is a constant thing. They didn't invent it. They simply championed it.
Yeah.
My thing is I'm watching it as a sketch show. I'm not watching Family Guy as a show as the way people are conditioned to watch animation. I'm watching it as each scene is a joke. Each scene is a little short film that I'm going to get to watch.
That's exactly why I don't like it. I also hate Saturday Night Live. I hate sketch shows. They don't do anything for me. They're just boring, and most of the time the jokes are low hanging fruit. It's pretty rare where they like really hit it out of the park.
I think one of the reasons that I like Family Guy so much is because they will take their time and really play with a concept as opposed to having a sketch structure where it feels more free to play with something as opposed to a sketch. Saturday Night Live has not done it for me in a while because the sketch, like big Hollywood movies, the sketches are too structured.
Yeah.
Even if you're watching, if you go back and you watch, commercial parodies are one thing. Everyone's been doing that for a long time. But like, if you watch Wild and Crazy Guys, like, those sketches were great because like, it was like, okay, the characters are just going to walk into a laundromat. Like, that's so odd. And then we're just going to do character work in a laundromat. Like, that's weird. Like it's a very odd thing. And now it's sort of, because Saturday Night Live has too much money, even for the little amount of money they have, we've seen it as bog standard to be, and they're in some weird location. I think Family Guy is more willing to say the reason that remember the time you did this thing is because it sort of primes you a little bit for the joke, which I'm into. I like being primed for a joke and then I'll buy into it.
I don't like to see him coming.
Oh, I'm the other way. I'm sort of a big fan of comedy, and I like someone to say, like, here's the joke I'm going to do. Let me see if I land it.
See, that puts me on guard. I'm like, this isn't going to be any funny. Like, one of the reasons I don't like calling this podcast, I don't consider this a comedy podcast at all. It's a non-serious podcast. It's, we don't take anything serious, but I would never be like, oh yeah, come here to laugh. Like I think it's funny. I think sometimes funny things happen, but it's not a comedy podcast,
Yeah, I mean, I like it, and the reason that I was excited to come on and do it is because you genuinely talk about movies.
Yeah.
Which I think sometimes, movie criticism shows want to be funny.
Yes.
And they want to land on jokes, and then people aren't being genuine when they're talking. A lot of times it leads to people slamming on movies. A lot of times it leads to people agreeing or disagreeing with each other for the sake of doing it. Like, in the course of this conversation, it's just two people pounding around talking about movies. Like, you don't like something? Like, no, I like that. You like something? I don't like that. We both like something together, or we don't, like, it becomes a very genuine thing, and that's why it's fun. I guess you're right that if you had told me like, and my favorite shows are very rarely, it's so weird that I like Family Guy and Futurama and The Simpsons because my favorite podcasts specifically are very rarely like, and we're going to be funny today. It's like, we could be funny if we want, but we might get real.
Yeah.
We might just talk from the heart.
Yeah.
It's so odd that I'm so drawn and willing to be like, no, Family Guy's great because they tell me the jokes are coming and I like the jokes and I'm sort of two minds in that way.
Yeah, I like just being able to experience something without being told what I'm going to experience, like without knowing, what's coming or I just want to get lost in a story. If I'm reading a book or I'm hearing a podcast or I'm watching a movie, I want to be able to just be like, go for the ride and not anticipate what's coming. Or like if there's, like I went and saw The Foreigner with Jackie Chan. I don't know if you've seen that yet. And I hated it.
No, I don't know if that's getting an American release.
Oh, I think it is with Jackie Chan, Pierce Brosnan. It came out a few weeks ago.
Maybe I just don't know. Ooh, I like both those people a lot. I own many of the police stories. I'm a big Jackie Chan fan. Both versions of Drunken Master.
Those are great movies. This is not a good movie.
He's getting older, man.
The filmmaking was bad. They crammed 2 movies into one. There was 2 really good movies that they could not decide what they wanted to make. I don't want to spoil it in case you do end up seeing it, but
Okay.
I forget where I was going with that.
You were talking about you saw The Foreigner.
Yeah.
But what we were saying before that, you want to get lost.
Yeah. Yeah, and so watching Jackie Chan, every time he talked in that movie, I only could see Jackie Chan. I couldn't see his character. I couldn't see the drama that they were establishing with his character. I just saw Jackie Chan acting. And so I had a really hard time accepting him as the character versus him as the actor. Yeah.
Getting lost in something is such a demand on people. And I think maybe, I watch Futurama a lot. I think maybe because it's not that I'm lost in it, but I very much like where they're going with it. And Futurama isn't afraid to have a heartfelt moment, but it's also, the characters are a little bit, anything can happen at any moment because they're, the writers are willing to just take it there, and their magic wand is science fiction in that we can find a logical reason through science fiction to make us get there. But I was going to say something about something very poignant to close up about Star Wars and the magic wand in anime, but I've completely forgot it. It's true to life, which is what we're talking about. True to life. I want that more. I just want more cause I've noticed that throughout the years, like even idiots in movies, like they're so together. Even Homer, remembers the plot. I really want characters to just more times just forget to show up. That's real life. For me, I still don't think we're really there with real life. Do you know how many, everybody experiences it. Think about the actual struggles of your life. Think about how much more, it's never we tried to do it and we couldn't do it and we failed. Think about how much more the struggles of your life are, oh yeah, that person just never called me back.
Yeah. Well, I wish.
You know what I mean? That should be the movie. It's we go there, we get there, someone just doesn't call back and we all die.
Well, there should be plot points in shows that are inconvenient, or shows or movies or whatever, that makes it harder because this is something that would actually happen. There's that whole post-it note rule, how many movies could be solved if someone would have just left a note. There's almost every romantic comedy is based off of a misunderstanding between two people that there's no reason. Oh yeah, and
those are, I actually think that the sitcom structure is the cancer of I don't know that I would use the term cancer, but if we're going to be calling something the cancer, that sitcom structure of Three's Company really ruined a lot of shows because they're like, if someone just tells the truth in a lot of sitcoms, it's like,
Yes.
okay, just say what's going on and do it. And usually that's not great. And with the great shows are the ones where the one lie is like, that's not even enough. Like you get caught right away on that lie, so you have to change it. But like that does drive me nuts. But in the end, it should just be like, I just don't like you. I didn't remember. Not enough characters are ever like, oh, I just didn't remember.
Yeah.
And that for me is how I can get lost in it. And like, I think that's what draws me to Fry is that he's very stupid. Same with Fry and Homer. Like I like very stupid characters because in reality, they're not that stupid. They're kind of like averagely intelligent. You know, they mess up. They don't understand what they're doing. They get electrocuted. That's what happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Really, every other character is hyper intelligent, remembering exactly what's going on at every second.
Well, it's kind of the new kid, or the kid at the new, or going to a new school story, right? With Fry. Like he jumps ahead 1,000 years and he's in this new environment and he doesn't know how things work and, you know, what things are supposed to be, but he has the general understanding of how to operate, but he's just constantly figuring it out, you know?
I think that's why I find The Simpsons and Futurama more realistic is because I would, this is more poignant. I was going to make a really good poignant point before, but this is a great poignant point in favor of the ridiculous sitcom structure and the magic wand of forgetting every week as a realistic thing. When you go into a convenience store, if you're, you know, especially in a city you've never been to, everyone, when you walk into that convenience store, you've like, especially a brand name, your CVS's, your Rite Aids, your Duane Reads, your Walgreens, your Kruger, your Kroger's, your Cumberland Farms. I'm trying to get all the localisms here. But your Piggly Wigglies. By all means, by all intents and purposes, by all manner of you understanding that store, you don't know where things are in that store. Like you actually don't know what's in that store. But for some reason, the part of your brain that says you're supposed to look smart in front of everyone lets everyone walk into every single 7-Eleven like, I know where I'm going. Here like you walk in with such confidence, even though you could have never have been there before. It is that new kid in a school thing where you're like, you're just pretending you know where stuff is. You don't really know. And every time and despite you not ever being in that 7-Eleven or that, you know, rest stop, you walk into every single one pretending like, of course I've been here before. I know where to find stuff, but you don't. And that's very odd to me. And I think that's what, resonates with me on a personal level and I actually do see a lot of, I think that ending on convenience stores is kind of a nice way to end it because the visuals of The Simpsons and Futurama and all those things are very much convenience store looking. It is a lot about soda and, packaging and things like that. And, the not so nice parts of society that are very nice and formally and convenient, furniture and generic candies and things like that, and medicines. That sort of aesthetic is very much feels real life to me, as opposed to something that might even be more grounded in reality. That world is where I sort of view the world as being mostly packaging and candies and medicines and Advil and stuff like that. That's more my world than it is something very realistic that's very human. Yeah. That design element does it for me.
Well, so this episode is going to come out on December 27th, which means Star Wars came out a week and a half ago. What did you think about the new Star Wars movie?
Oh, well, I know I'm already booked on Jabber and the Drone. I've told them it's another podcast. I'm already booked to go on that. So at this point, you would have heard me on Jabber the Drone, possibly having called up drunk from the theaters because I can't see any of the Star Wars movies sober. I know for anyone dealing with substance abuse, that sounds like I'm coping, but I really can't see them sober because they're very bad. So I will have already yelled about it. You'll have heard me on that. I will say, I was very surprised that Mark Hamill decided to play the Joker in, Mark Hamill famous for being the Joker since he was, Luke Skywalker all those years ago. I was very surprised that he was in clown makeup for this Star Wars. It was very shocking to see that mashup. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I was surprised too because it's two different studios.
Yeah, as we all now know, on December 27th, there is a massive lawsuit going on between Disney and
Warner Brothers
and Warner Brothers. It's bad, everyone. That is how American. Everyone's always like, I'm not a big fan of apocalypse movies just because they're stupid.
Yeah,
but that really would end American wealth if they put the Joker in a Star Wars movie. That lawsuit would probably destroy the American economy.
Did you hear about the who plays Superman? Why can't I think of his name?
Oh, Gerard Butler. No, I'm sorry. Jennifer Aniston is playing Superman.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston is Superman. So he is in the Justice League movie, which was filming at the same time as Mission Impossible 7, 6, 7,
12.
5, 12?
19.
Whichever Mission Impossible movie. In
19, below Planet of Mission Impossible. Right, that's what that one's called. Below the Planet of Mission Impossible.
He has a mustache in the Mission Impossible movie, doesn't as Superman, but they needed to do reshoots during the filming of Mission Impossible. So Warner Brothers is like, hey, can you shave your mustache? And whoever does Mission Impossible, Sony or Fox or Universal, I don't know who it is, was like, no, he can't. So Warner Brothers has to go through and digitally alter every frame and take out his mustache. It's like millions of dollars because of this mustache.
It's funny. I just watched the X-Men movies, which are, in my opinion, the perfect superhero movies. X-Men 1, 2, and 3. And then you can throw Logan in there.
I would take out 3, but.
Oh no, you might not have seen it in a while. X-Men 3 is a phenomenal movie. I think it had
a lot of potential. I think it had a lot of things to talk about, but I don't think it did it very well.
Well, now I know what next time I'm on, we're going to do Matrix and the X-Men 1, 2, 3.
All right.
That's the two trilogies, the trilogy pluses. You know what I mean? You have to watch those and watch all the other ones. We'll do those next time I'm on. But, they did that with, Patrick Stewart and, Ian McKellen to make them younger. They did all that stuff. It's people forget how much special effects they have to do when it's just casual. You forget that stuff. So I always like to see someone having to burn a few $1 million to get rid of a mustache. Voldemort, that guy's got a nose. There's no reason to really get rid of his nose. But someone did. Yeah. They got rid of, there's no more nose there.
All right. Well, if Futurama
and
comes
wishing
on...
all of you, Happy New Year's, everyone. Wishing all of you a noseless New Year's.
So if Futurama comes on TV, what are you going to do?
Absolutely keep it on always, but it won't come on TV. No one carries it anymore. You can't watch Futurama on TV anymore. Very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I would watch it. I like the show. It's one that you can kind of pick up anywhere. It seems. I've only watched the first few seasons, but it seems like it doesn't really matter where you start.
It doesn't, but it's just, it sort of has some Star Trek themes to it, and it's very sad because Star Trek and Futurama are these two shows, these two almost perfect sci-fi shows that get attacked by networks and that are pulled from networks all the time with having done nothing wrong. Like, it's very odd. It's one of these very odd things where it's like, yeah, it seems so easy, but yet people are like, no, like, we're getting rid of it off of Netflix and we're not going to have it on our network. And same with Star Trek. It's like, oh man, this is really getting attacked more than it needs to.
Sorry. I'll just cut all that me choking on myself out. But
no, let's keep it in. People like to hear you in pain.
So how can people find you?
Let's Start a Cult podcast. Find it on iTunes. You'll hear everything about me there.
Cool. And then if you go over to Patreon, you can help and vote for Taylor or I for whoever's going to get punished this month. And you can find us on Twitter at IcingThatPod.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, we so this month, November, whoever has the least amount of dollar votes on Patreon has to get their legs waxed. We haven't decided what's going to happen in December, but we're going to make a video of it. And hopefully it's my co-host, because I'd really rather not have to get my legs waxed.
Now, is it properly waxed, or can you do anything?
Waxed. Like.
Has to be. Because there's several methods. And I feel like maybe you could do some research and get away with it. If you have to do it yourself, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, microwave it and everything.
Yeah.
do it yourself.
Yeah, the point is to make it as miserable as possible for the other person and hope it doesn't happen to you.
I've always thought my legs getting waxed would be miserable because I don't have a ton of hair. And so I think that I've always been worried that if I were to get my legs waxed, that they pull off skin. That's always been, I have a very, I'm not a not haired man. You know what I mean? I'm not a very unhairy man. But for some reason my legs are fairly, like not that hairy. And so I've always been worried that if someone were, to dare me into doing this, that I'd get skin. That's really my main worry, is getting skin peeled off.
See, if my legs are so hairy, I feel like it might be waxing someone's head. Like that's if you don't.
Oh, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough for you. I think that my concern is more, see, I'm choking. The audience is clamoring for it. My concern is more fictional. My concern is like, if I'm to get hurt when I'm getting waxed, like, it'll be a real event. Like, I'll lose skin and I'll have to go take medicine for it.
Yeah.
But for you, it's definitely gonna suck for you. Like,
yeah.
It's gonna suck.
I might
It's
die.
gonna really suck for you.
It might kill me.
It's not gonna be fun. Yeah. Well, everyone vote for, it's gonna be bad either way.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it happens to Taylor. And that's the biggest goal. But.
Well, hopefully. Everyone, please make sure he suffers. Happy New Year.